Check, check. Checking audio. Seeing if it worked this time. Let me know if it's working this time. Check. Audio check. Take two. Try and take two. Anybody hear me? Anybody got anything on any of this stuff? Check. Check. All right. Well, that was fun. All right. I gotta get back into my shorts now. Sorry about that, everybody. So, this is why people quit on podcasts. Just because the fact that technology never makes it easy. So, for the last 20 minutes, I talked to myself, and then for the last 20 after that, I tried to figure out what my issue was. But sounds like we are all good now. Everything's streamed up good. I don't know if I put in a bad URL key code or anything like that, but we are live now. So, hopefully, everybody out there is enjoying this Wednesday night. So, now I have to reiterate everything that I was talking about in my Whitetails and Whiskey welcome that I did earlier tonight. So, we might not go as late tonight because we got a late start on it, but we're going to hit the ground running with our topics and go from there. So, our whiskey of the night was Turkey 101. After all that, I might need a little splash in the top of this to see where I'm obviously dealing with tonight. So we're going to go with another one with that. So, and get this rolling. So Turkey 101 is our whiskey tonight. And then we started off with the weed of the week, which it is 388 in here. I had a bookmark in this, and then I moved it all. So, like we talk about in all of our Whitetails and Whiskey episodes, this being number 2, we start off with a weed of the week, and this week we have Velvet Leaf. So Velvet Leaf is an annual forb that you might find growing in your food plots, and this is one that's not necessarily a huge, hard one to get rid of in a lot of cases. Sometimes it can be, but most of the time it's not too bad. But I was out feeding the chickens tonight and turkeys, and I saw this growing next to the enclosure by the back of the horse run, so I said that's a good one to put in tonight. It's a really identifiable characteristic, so that's what we're going with tonight is Velvet Leaf. So this is an annual forb. Typically you're going to see this in cultivation of fields, food plots, stuff like that, but where you have soil disturbance as a result of that. It has a large heart-shaped leaf, as you can see right here, and this will come off in 2 sections off of the stem typically. You have your main leaf, and then you have a secondary leaf that comes off of the stem at the base, and that's where your flowers develop on these. Now, these flowers aren't very developed on this one, so they're not a really good example, but these are typically a yellow or maybe an orangish type flower. And then what this happens to do is you can see all the seeds developing in there. Sorry, I'm pointing it to the mic and not the camera. Typically 9 to 15 seeds is what Dr. Craig Harper's book says. This is a non-native actually. So this is one that is not native but is really prevalent throughout the United States. This can be controlled very well with Roundup, 2,4-D, all those good crops like that. 1 second, guys. I don't know what's going on upstairs, but my dogs are going nuts. Sorry about that. I didn't know if that was coming through on the mic or not. The dogs were going crazy upstairs for some reason. So back to it. This can be controlled with either glyphosate or 2,4-D is a good one for it. Also listed is dicamba and caliparide. for that. So, and also Velvet Leaf has no wildlife value. So this is one that's a nice one to know that it's in your field, identify it, get rid of it if you need to, and then, you know, tell that it has no use for wildlife. So whether you remember it or not, that's up to you. The other common look-alike or feel-alike that you'll have with that is lamb's ear or mullein. That is a very soft leaf as well, but a very, very different shape. So once those seeds are developed, they look kind of like an upside-down pincushion, I call it. These ones aren't quite as developed, so you can't really see that example with this, but that's typically what they look like once they are set seed and develop. The seed head puffs right out and kind of looks like that, if you can imagine that, on the bottom of the leaflets, as this is drenched in water from the bucket dripping all over my laptop. So I'm just looking to see if there's more. Yeah, you can see the flower on this one really well. And these open up a little bit more, but not a very showy flower either. So there's our weed of the week. And now we can get into the itinerary for the night. So let me switch over to Facebook, make sure that we are all good on our platforms. Yep, everything is good tonight. Comments coming in come from my wife. Whiskey of the night is Turkey 101. Plant. Where does this weed tend to grow? Typically, you'll see it, like I said, in disturbed soil areas, sometimes poor soil areas. But typically in a landscape setting on a piece of recreational ground, you'll see it where you had some kind of soil disturbance. Being a annual forb that really thrives on those kind of conditions and situations for where it likes to call home. So going into it, we had the Finanza this past weekend. We talked about that on the last Whitetails and Whiskey episode. Couple cool things with that this year. The moon shoot was a little bit different, and if you haven't been, I really highly recommend putting it on your calendar. It's always the weekend following Labor Day, and that's at Seneca Lake Duck Hunters in beautiful overlooking Seneca Lake. It's free on-site camping. They have a moon shoot Friday night. You could camp out starting Thursday night, I believe. I would have to double check that, but usually you could pull in Thursday night camp, Friday night camp, Saturday night camp, go home Sunday, or any combination of that above. Moon shoot was Friday, did very well. That was a little bit different this year with the way that they structured that. Moon shoot was a random draw for partners, so you didn't get to pick your partner as in years past, but then you were randomly drawn with your score and another person's score to decide the winning team. Unfortunately for me, just like as we'll talk about, I didn't quite make it to the money with the moon shoot. And I didn't make it into the money with the money round or into the finalists for the trophy round. I shot very, very well. I was very happy with my score. I shot what's called even. If you've shot 3D archery in the past or anything like that, you might know. But for those of you that might not know, typical scoring on a target is anywhere on the body is 5 points. In the vital lung region, we'll call it, that's typically your 8. And then you have a 10 ring that's depending on the target. They all vary a little bit. Same thing with the lung, kill area, whatever you want to call it. But the 10 ring is typically, I'd say, about yay big. And then it has probably quarter, maybe silver dollar size, what's called 11s or bonus rings in the IBO scoring system. So I shot even, meaning I shot an average of a 10 on every target. I did 3 8s, so every one of my shots was in the lung vital area. And then I had 6 bonus rings to make up for my scores that were below a 10 to get me to even. So I shot an even 200, which unfortunately was not enough to get me into the finals for that. So unfortunately, I shot my best I've ever shot in a competition, but there were some other really, really good shooters there, and it just happened to be it wasn't enough to make the cut. So other than that, though, great time shooting, great time watching Chip, Rob Tabor, whatever you want to refer to him as, play music, hang out with everybody, cornhole, yard games, camping games, shoot the bows, have a little bit to drink with everybody, catch up with people that I only maybe see once or twice a year, at stuff like the Finanza or other scattered archery shoots, people from Pennsylvania and other areas of New York that I don't see on the regular. So that's always a great time at the Finanza. So uh, very, very happy with that and look forward to next year. And I was proud to be a title sponsor on uh, for Old Tin Cup and for Future Forest Properties. We sponsored the Target Bag range and then did Target sponsors with a title sponsorship for that event. So very, very thankful for that. And hopefully it's even better than next year or better than this past year. I think they said they nearly doubled their shooters from the year prior. So that's something that's really, really cool for them, that that event is growing back up to where it once was, to my understanding. It's been kind of dipped the last couple of years with COVID. So next on the itinerary, current events, is the Woods and Wildlife event. That is this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday. So this is a 2-day event. This is brand new this year. This is at in Canandaigua at the Steam Pageant Grounds. Friday it is 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then Saturday it is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So for that event, I believe it said on the flyer that it was $10 to get in. And what that $10 does, get you access to all the events going on, all the seminars going on, all the booths and tables and stuff set up for the various outdoor things. If you want more information on that, more specifics, or starting to look at specific details on it, there's more stuff on the Facebook page. Woods and Wildlife Outdoor Show is what it is on Facebook. So I'll be speaking on the 16th. So I'll be speaking Friday at 4 p.m. on buying and selling hunting land, and I think targeting trophy bucks or hunting trophy bucks, I think is what they gave me for a title for my seminar. And then the 17th, Saturday, I'll be speaking at 2 p.m. just before it closes down at 3. So $10 gets you in. There's some other really, really good speakers and presenters and seminars. So check out the list online. I know John Teeter will be there, as well as Javen from Lake Country Logging. He did the timber harvest on my grandmother's piece of ground and did a phenomenal job. Can't say enough about that. He's talking with another gentleman on managing your woodlot for wildlife. So good talks, good event. Looking forward to the first annual one and glad to be a part of it. Really kind of, blessed and thankful that they offered to have me speak at the event. And I think it's really cool. I do enjoy doing the seminars, these live Q&As. If anybody's been tuning into stuff for, the past couple of years, or if this is your first time checking it out, thanks for checking it out. And I really appreciate it, guys. And the feedback, the live Q&A back and forth, that's where I believe I can help the most people, is doing these live things, because it's real time when it's popping into your head. You're not sitting, and possibly listen to this. You're getting the real answers to the questions you have. So that sums up what I have going on now. I have client work to do tomorrow after work. And then, like I said, Friday, I'll be out at the Woods and Wildlife event after I probably leave work I'll probably leave at around noon on Friday to hang out there for a bit and then present at 4 o'clock. So looking forward to that. So I guess new for the 2023 consulting season. Something I'm going to try this year out is, because I want to say thank you and give back to the people that support me, past clients that support me and refer me to new people, etc., friends that refer me to people, family that refer me to people, etc. I'm doing a referral commission for site work or on-site property visits with a confirmed booked day and scheduled day for whoever refers that person to me. So that's something new and something I wanted to do as a thank you for all the people that support me and refer me, and like to let my work speak for itself with it. And that's why most of my stuff is coming in from referrals. I don't do a whole lot with outdoor shows anymore. I do most of my stuff online, and that's where people are finding me, it seems, is these live videos, the YouTube videos, stuff that I post online, and then obviously word of mouth. So as a thank you, like I said, I want to do the referrals this year for the 2023 consulting season. So am booking up quick. This year booked up more quickly than I thought it was going to, and I'm still trying to get stuff finished in with some habitat work with specific projects and stuff like that for clients, and get the last little bits tied up. I'm in pretty good shape. Hopefully Sunday, I plan on going out to my property and doing a last assessment on my food plots, With the last Whitetails and Whiskey, we talked about white spot fungus that I have in my brassicas. I've talked to some people about that. Um, best thing to do with that is to get it rotated out for several years and then work in different rotations going forward. Typically in the past, I've suggested doing flip-flops on sides of fields, but if you have some of our native wild mustards and stuff like that, they can carry the fungus. They're not as susceptible to it as some of these brassica species that you typically have, purple top turnip, hybrid turnips, radishes, stuff like that. So I wanted to get a really good barometer of growth before I moved forward with overseeding with a cereal grain that would stunt out any turnips that I had that might push through the fungus. So we'll see with that and tune into the YouTube. I'm sure I'll be doing a video on it, looking at probably a different plot or two. So going forward with it, that's what I'm trying to do, is figure out the best way to do that. And I'm in very good shape. I know I'm mid-September now. I think it's the 14th is the date today. So not too late. I've planted cereal grains right up to the 1st of October. The thing that's got me a little bit worried right now is the um, sorry, I got stuff coming in, questions and stuff coming in. Sorry, folks. Anyway, um, so I lost where I was going with my topic. Um, I'm sorry, I'm all flustered with everything going on with the technical difficulties and everything, guys. So I want to apologize. Uh, so yeah, leading with white spot fungus and everything on the plots. We're trying to figure out the best way to attack that. I'm thinking we're going to go with a rye, heavy rye planting into our brassicas where they are thin or the been burnt out by the white spot. So that's what I got going on with my food plots and planning that kind of stuff going forward. I'm going to check the comments and topics. High score this weekend. Sounds like everybody is ready for season. Yep. So yeah, like always, guys, with this, we're doing our live questions and answers. So if anybody has any stuff they want to specifically talk about, I'll be more than happy to help out with any of the questions that you might have pertaining to what you have going on this season. So other new things with me is I have my big board all set up in that far corner of the basement down here next to my office. Tomorrow, after my client work, I will probably be down here being a mad scientist, and I'll probably give you guys a sneak peek on the YouTube of what that looks like when I start getting that all laid out. So it's an 8 foot by 45 inches, not quite 4 foot, so like 8 by 4 whiteboard that came out of one of the classrooms at the college. And that's going to be my new board for my 1 year rules and all that going forward. So really excited about that. Ready to graduate from a pad of paper, even though it works very well, and a smaller whiteboard to the much bigger one where I can really put data on it, triangulate it, and maybe probably hang a map next to it as well, just to have all those visual pieces come together. So the 1 year rule is something I'm very, very a huge proponent of. Last 4 out of 5 deer that I've killed were on 1 year rules. Bud right here is one of them. Outlaw right over here on the side is another one. Then Baby 10 was a 1 year, and George was a 1 year. The only one that wasn't was Wybuck, who is over there now by the whiteboard. So, I mean, that's a really cool thing with the 1 year. I really do enjoy putting that data out there, talking to people about that, and really seeing where that's going to go and progress. So it's something I've been talking to for a couple years now with clients and on the channel and stuff like that. So I really encourage folks to get out there and do that this year, is to look at some of your data, look at some of your past trail cameras, start taking some stand observations as well, because I do factor that into my 1 year rule. is specific encounters I had with bucks going forward for future seasons, and then blue dot dates is 2 consecutive years on that day. Um, Definitely blue dotted if they're both daylight or whatever, but typically I'm looking not necessarily for a specific location, let's call it, but I'm looking for a specific section of a property that I see a deer shift into seasonally. So typically, depending on the property, I break it down into like two halves, or if it's a little bit larger, maybe 4 or 5 pieces, whatever it might be, by different habitat features, different right-of-ways. I see right-of-ways as huge dividing lines, maybe a road system that goes through it, a public road might be something like that. Different property owners, different habitat types, all the stuff like that could change different zones in the way that lays out. So maybe we'll talk about how to divide that piece going forward with the big board, and how I kind of divide our farm up and know what spots, what cameras are in each zone. That's all kind of in my head. I don't have it color coded or anything like that because I know where these locations are. I've been working on the property now since late 2007 going into 2008. So 2008 would have been the first hunting season. So that is 2, 12, 14. This is my 14th season hunting the farm and working on the farm. And we made a lot of mistakes over the years. I'm not afraid to admit that, learn from the mistakes, and I feel like it makes you better, and you learn a lot more from making mistakes. And then also you can help a lot more people by making sure that they don't make their mistakes with it too. So this white spot thing is a good example, but there's tons of things over the years that I've learned. Some things aren't necessarily mistakes. Some things just didn't get the desired results. And then you can balance that and find the best pieces for the puzzle, put the right tools in your toolbox, whatever analogy you want to use for that to help you be more successful. So that's where I have really cut my teeth on it with our personal piece of property. And then, like I always say, I've been doing this since my mom said the last episode when she commented in that I was in the woods at like 3 months old, checking stands and doing stuff like that in preparation for the season. And I believe me and my dad did our first food plot. I want to say it's 2001. Um, and we did a winter wheat food plot, and that's still one of our main cereal grain staples that we utilize in our food plot programs. So, and it's something that's going to be more prevalent here going forward in the future because, unfortunately, with a majority of our fields, um, and I want to get a good barometer for the white fungus and how prevalent it is in fields, or if it's not in certain fields, I might be able to get away with it for another season of turnips, depending on the fields, depending on my rotation. Again, I'll refer back to my brown book. It's got all my field information in it, all my soil mix, uh, all my seed mixes in it, and then my soil data is in a binder to look at that year to year to year, and that's in my office. So, but all that stuff, all the data, all that stuff can help you be more productive for your piece of property and how you manage it and how you go about making the right decisions for it. So, and I guess that leads into a really good topic of I had an individual reach out to me about consulting on their specific piece of property. And once I sent over my pricing sheet, was basically told my prices were insane, everything like that. I tried to model my pricing after what I would be willing to pay for a service similar to that, and what I think is fair for my time, my knowledge. I go to half a dozen to a dozen different seminars a year for continuing education, looking at different things. I went to a soil health seminar that was put on by a Department of Agriculture here out in Wyoming County. I go to timber forestry seminars, all sorts of different things to try to be as well versed and well rounded and find what's working for people or what other people are doing on their properties, to always be learning, just like I learn from every client. So, and like I told the individual that said that, is they said that it's too expensive. I think that that's even more of a reason to work with a consultant. If you're worried about or need to budget your money like all of us do as landowners, I do the same thing as well, budgeting what I can spend per year or per month or whatever it might be broken down to. on my hobby, my hunting and everything like that, as well as anything else you have going on in life. And if you're really that conscious about your finances, like you should be, I would say that it's even more important to work with a consultant or work with somebody to help you lay out and make the right decisions for that property, so you're not wasting money, you're not wasting your time on that piece of property, doing stuff that doesn't fit it necessarily. So I think that it's even more important for somebody that's, um, worried about the cost, or saying the cost is too much or whatever it might be, to use that as not an excuse, but use that as even more of a reason to work with a consultant. Whether it's myself, there's a couple other really good ones here in New York that I know really well, and would also, wouldn't shy away from using either of those individuals as well, that I can think of off the top of my head. Nothing wrong with them, and like I tell people all the time, and I've said it on other podcasts and other, videos, everything like that, that it's um it's just like anything else. Your financial consultant might not be the same one that your friend uses, your parents use, but it might be one that a different friend uses, because it fits more of what you need and more of what your style is, or whatever it might be. So ask questions, and I would say that don't let the financial uh, speed bump, or whatever you want to call it, or the financial excuse, be the driving factor that, keeps you from getting your property to its max potential. Um, this is something I've kind of bounced around with. The idea for a video is really, how many hunting seasons do you have left, or how many hunting seasons do you have on a piece of property, maybe before it goes away, like it's a lease piece, permission piece, or maybe something that you own. How many years are you willing to sacrifice not having that property up to where it's producing the best for you? Um, how many years can you sacrifice that? Like I said, to get our property to where it's at, we're going on 14, 15 years now, and we're really starting to hone in the last bits of it. But there was a big learning curve there. There was a lot of time there where we weren't making maybe the right decisions, or the right location decisions, or whatever it might be with it. And having somebody that's been exposed to mistakes, exposed to success, and not just on one property, but across many different properties all around the state, all over the Northeast, on multiple properties, sizes, shapes, habitat types, features, and somebody that's seen a lot of ground, is where you're going to make the most benefit with a consultant. So that's my soapbox pitch for myself and my consulting. Uh, like I said, I would really, really encourage you guys to work with one. Doesn't have to be me. And like I say, and I'll still tell that gentleman that, you know, this is more of a reason to hire me, is so you don't have the financial stress of projects and stuff like that that aren't necessary for your property or your program on it. My content's all free. I don't have workbook classes, anything like that. This is videos online, single take, live, no edits. The first take tonight was 20 minutes of me talking to myself without any audio coming through. And there was a issue with the comments coming in, so I couldn't even see that I had an audio issue. There was nobody here to tell me I had an audio issue, etc. So this is real life single take stuff, and that's how I, build my model, or whatever you want to call it, around it for my content. This is it. This is real life. This isn't edits and, B-roll and all that stuff, and that's just me. Straight to the point, no fluff. You get what you get, and that's how I've kind of always been. So anyway, so what's everybody else got going on? Any questions rolling in? Let me check the comments section down here. Good examples of consultants to ask to personalize a land plan, budget, timeframes, test conditions, goals. What are some example questions consultants ask? So each property is very different with the way you approach it. Um, so the way that I do it, I send out a pre-visit questionnaire. This gives me my background or my homework on the property before I even go out to it. I look at the topo map, I'll look at the aerial imagery, I'll look at all that stuff and have a rough game plan about where I want to go during that day for my on-site visits. And then once I'm on site, I want to go to specific areas I've outlined, looked at. I want to look at the different conditions of your different habitat types. I want to look around and see, access, borders, topography changes, major topography changes, saddles, benches, all that kind of stuff is where I'm highlighting where I want to go throughout the day. Budget is a huge one for folks, whether it's, doing projects in different stages, picking the projects and the pieces that are going to make the most sense for you and your property, that you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of is huge. So that's something that you can also get out of that, is having the ability to have somebody be able to itemize or tell you what is most important or what should be done first, or the timeline or time frame for your projects that you have. Time frame stuff like that's my kind of, I guess, label that I get from the pert near guys and stuff like that, is I'm the access guy. Access is everything. If your access is crap and we can get it straightened around and fixed, time frame is you're going to improve your hunting the very next season or the very next month from when you had the disturbance. So critically looking at your access is where I always start with a property program. I look at what your goals are for the property, whether you want to target 4-year-olds, maybe just the oldest bucks in your neighborhood, period. The top 10-15% of the population is what you do it. Excuse me. Top 10-15% of the population is what you target. So, and then test conditions, different things like invasive species prevalence, age of timber, when it was cut, stuff like that, looking at where it's at for a piece of property, and then blending that again with different habitat improvements we have planned, stand locations, all that stuff we're going to look at, ribbon up, mark up, and then at the end of it, I include a Huntera map for clients for their property. I typically don't recommend a marked up one. We can mark one up if you would like, but I recommend putting that in your office or your camp or somewhere in your house, maybe something like that, where you can enjoy a really high quality map, and you can put it in a frame, draw on it with a whiteboard marker on the frame if you want to do it that way, or you can get the magnet map ones and put your magnets on those maps, going forward with it. So that's always something that's a good hit, and that's something that I include in it because I very much recommend that for individuals as a high quality map. So Mark C, actually, a good thing I checked over on the YouTube. I had a comment come in from Mark over on the YouTube live. Good evening, everybody. Got a question. I have a 15-gallon sprayer. I could get away with just one to spray poison and use it for liquid fertilizer when I rinse it out after every use. So one spray to poison and then use it for liquid fertilizer when I clean. So you rinse out your sprayer after every use, is what I'm getting out of that, Mark. There's a solution, you can get it right at like TSC. That's a tank cleaner. I'd recommend that if you're switching it over. Myself, typically I do different backpack sprayers for different applications for habitat work. So, and then they're marked with their own label, like some are Glide, some are 2,4-D. I don't usually mix chemicals in tanks if I can help it, but the best way to go about that is definitely rinsing it out with a rinse aid, like that you can get on Tractor Supply, Runnings, or one of those stores. So that's how I would use that product, Mark. Rinse your tank out, flush it, and then you can spray it out in a gravelly area, something like that with the rinse chemical. Don't put it like down a storm drain or something like that. Put it into a stony area, or maybe an area that you got to spray some weeds around a fence, something like that. If you're cycling out a Roundup or other chemical. That's what I would recommend before putting a liquid fertilizer in it, because any little trace amount of gly could go in and, terminate your crop. So hope that helps. Says thank you. Perfect. So good comment, good topic right there. Sprayers. So I have two 15 gallons for the back of a four wheeler. Both of them are currently glide in the tank. Haven't been rinsed out since. I'll clean them at the end of the year. I'll triple rinse them. Run 3 full tanks of water through them into gravel areas to filter all the chemical out of the lines and flush them for the year. But if I was doing a switch over to like a liquid fertilizer, like Mark said, I would definitely use a rinsing aid chemical in that process to make sure I don't kill anything or have a unwanted chemical in the mix with it. So very good topic, and definitely something that's not talked about by very many individuals with spray tanks. So, and actually, spray tanks, that's a funny story this year. Had a lot of issues with spray tanks, and right now I have a Franken spray tank. My 40-gallon tank frame for my 3-point broke. So, currently my 40-gallon tank is down, and I'm working off of my 15-gallon tanks, trying to get the best thing. And I took a hose off of one, clamps off the other, boom off of this one, that off that one, to make it all work this past year. So that's how my year went with spray tanks. Was not very good. Ended up having stuff break at not very opportune times this past year, unfortunately for me. So it's just something I had to deal with, and something, working with clients, doing, tractor work, mechanical implementation, stuff like that. Seemed like a lot of stuff, if it could go wrong, it was going wrong, unfortunately. But got through it, pushed through it, and everything's better because of it. So I'm gonna run this till about 9:15 tonight. Typically I run it till 9 o'clock, but that's with a 7:30 start. We got started a little late on it, and 9:15 will get us pretty close to right around that 45 minutes to an hour mark. So a couple more questions roll in, we'll get to them. If not, I'll just keep spitballing with other topics and comments. So another comment I got, or a question I got the other day, was from an individual about a piece of property that they were out on the other day, and they jumped a really big buck. So a couple things with that. I got a couple takeaways from that, and I think it's something that needs to be looked at kind of critically. So once, from what I've seen in past years, once the deer go hard antler, hard horn, typically, they're going to start shifting around. That last little bit of velvet, or once they start to strip off velvet, is where they're going to start to settle into that, mid-September, early fall range. Like right now, typically my property is getting better going into the hunting season, with more individual bucks showing up on our property historically. This year we had quite a few bucks in the summer, but they weren't consistent in the summer. They were scattered here. There are pictures. Some of them we knew, some of them we don't know. Some of them have new names and are bucks that we're going to follow for years to come. We got a lot of, uh, I guess, middle-aged bucks this year. A lot of 2 and 3 year olds. More 2 year olds, I think, in that balancing act. But just like the pyramid, it's got a lot of ones, a lot of twos, and then obviously the higher up your pyramid you get with age, you get less and less of. So, but right now, the bucks that are going to start to come on the property from historical data are going to be more prevalent going into these upcoming months, and more consistently on the property. We talked about it with the 1 year rule. I start looking at that really critically October 1 to start logging the data for that. And then you'll see on the YouTube channel, I'm going to put a video up of the big board, and then how I start to break that down and really look at how it correlates with different areas on a property or different bucks, year to year to year. And then being able to slide comparison on it, like with a big board like that, to look at the year before data, and then see to correlate, different zones that deer is going into and where to hunt them on that zone, or what zone to hunt them in during that time frame. And like I said, that's how I found a fair amount of success over the last couple years hunting. And even with bucks that I didn't end up killing, going in to hunt bucks specifically on those 1 year rules, those blue dates, those blue dot days that I call them, the 2 consecutive years in a zone or in a um, specific location, is stuff that I will really, really highlight on that and really take notice of. And again, I won't hunt those locations or situations if I don't have the right wind, don't have the right conditions, if it's like 80 degrees out, etc. I'm still looking at, environmental factors and the conditions that are out there with the weather before I'm even going into those spots. Um, so that's my big main plan with it. Uh, Derek says, "Hey buddy," I think that's Derek Tuttle's little picture down there in the corner that just popped in. So, hey man, how you doing? Glad you could tune in all the way from Idaho. Glad to see that you're not in the fires, and I hope that they're not spreading toward you, bud. So I know you were saying that the other day that you got a lot of fires out there in Idaho right now, and thankfully, it's something we don't deal with very often here in New York. I mean, we had a couple small fires this year, definitely in comparison, but they were only like 140 acres, and you guys are burning, thousands and thousands out there with how dry it's been. So hopefully you're staying safe, man. Love you, miss you, buddy, and got to definitely get hooked up here in the near future and make a trip out west. Maybe that's in the cards for next year. Or, obviously when you're back around here, I always hit you up and maybe you'll get me to throw those little disc golf thingies again, and we'll see how that goes. Wasn't very pretty last time, but I'd love to get out west and see the country out there. And you chase a lot bigger game than I do, elk and, muleys, antelope. I mean, that's crazy. So, but, well, like I said, guys, I apologize for the delay this afternoon, evening, with the audio and everything not being the greatest. Hopefully, I got the bugs worked out and it'll be better going forward in future episodes. Maybe I didn't relink my stream keys and all that stuff that I'm learning how to do now for the first time with the Bullhorn app, to try to, put it across Facebook to YouTube, everything else, to get it all flowing together the best I can. So, take a couple more questions. Let me check all the topics and platforms. We have nothing in on the Facebook side of things. The Bullhorn, let me scroll down. Nothing on the Bullhorn for new questions and topics. And then Derek says the mountain across the river is still burning. It'll be a good year for morels next spring. So that's definitely something interesting, and definitely something that I want to look at with you. There's a lot of research coming out of some of the southern states, and obviously it's not as high intensity burns as you guys are obviously having out there, where it's engulfing thousands and thousands of acres. But there's a lot of information coming out of the University of Mississippi that burning specific areas brings in more wildlife, in the form of turkey specifically, for burned areas, for bugging and new nesting the following year, or good fawning habitat response, because a lot of those forb species and the way they respond to the fire in a positive way. So, or they talk about, I think one that they were talking about out of the University of Mississippi too was bow stand burns, they were specifically calling them, burning a radius around your deer stand specifically to increase the food, or the more beneficial, higher attractive food around your tree stand, so that you have more success around your bow stand locations. Obviously, something not applicable in New York because we can't do control burns, but I'd be curious on how that affects the game species out in states like Idaho, um, or if it pushes them into different areas and almost makes wildlife free zones in some areas, and then pushes all the wildlife into different areas and stuff like that, obviously. So it's interesting and something, like I said, that I've never seen or never had experience with, and I'm just curious on how the game and the wildlife respond out there in Idaho to that and other states. So I know they've shown it positive for turkeys and deer in the south, but um, that's what I've kind of seen just from the research I've looked at and everything like that. So um, Mark says, have a nice 8 and 6 traveling together on camera, but nothing, I believe. The bachelor groups have split up here in South Carolina. So my dad messaged me the other night, and here in New York anyway, we have a real nice 3-year-old that we're on the fence whether we want to target him or not. Um, would be for several people that, not several, but a couple people that hunt the property, would probably be their biggest buck they've had the opportunity to take. So, and because of the antler size, um, probably, I would assume maybe one of the neighbors, a couple, one or two of the neighbors might pass him, but other than that, I don't foresee that deer getting past many other people. And he was with one small buck the other night, and most of the bucks I've actually seen this summer, I don't know why it is, haven't been in big groups. I think the biggest group of bucks I've seen on camera in a video, because I run most of my cameras on video mode in the summertime to look at specific characteristics, body shapes, and stuff like that. And I feel like I can get a better barometer going into the fall of those things by having the video in the summer. The biggest group I saw this year was 3, and in past years it's typically 5 or 6 in some groups. So I don't know why they're more divided and divvied up, but I didn't see very many big groups this year. So there was still 2 traveling. That 3-year-old was traveling with, like I think Dad said, a little spike buck or something like that. And then they were out there feeding on clover and stuff with a bunch of does and fawns, kind of in different sections of the field. But Dad saw them out there the other night, so that was cool. I'm definitely going to see a majority of the bachelor groups splitting up right now, though. But I think it was 2 or 3 opening days ago, October 1st here in New York, we had a major cold snap. Had actually a frost that morning, and some people actually even saw snowflakes on October 1st. And I don't know why, it might have been a bachelor group, it might have just been all the points connecting at once. I had like 6 or 7 bucks together at one time on October 1st, by a community scrape on next to one of our trail cam locations. So it's tough to say. I think it's all individuals. Some bucks I've never really seen them with another buck. Or maybe it's just 2 bucks that have been buddies since that they were, probably 2-year-olds when I started, noticing them together and stuff like that. So, bachelor groups, I could see it going a lot of different ways, and I think it's just, very individual like with people, that you have people that you'll hang out with, and some people hang out with a bigger group of friends, some people hang out with smaller groups of friends, and some people like to just be kind of loners. So I think it all kind of depends on the individuals and the group with the bachelor groups for bucks for sure. Derek says, I see deer chewing on burnt wood. I imagine it's a nutrient thing. Could be a carbon deficiency. Could be just like a lack of food availability as a whole. It's tough to say why they're chewing on the wood. I would assume it's a nutrient. They're pulling some trace mineral from it, carbon or whatever it might be that they're um, really utilizing. I'm not familiar with the nutrient uh, quantities for burnt wood and stuff like that, or burnt products. So that's definitely something neat. So a question came in over on Facebook. I heard it go bading. What is a morel? Morels are amazingly delicious mushrooms that um, are found in the spring. I got a couple hot spots that I go to. Obviously, nothing like some of the pictures I've seen Derek come up with out there in Idaho, but I've got a couple spots where I could typically go find a half a dozen to a dozen that are in really, really good shape, that I can take out of a cluster of them. So they're kind of a porous cone shaped looking mushroom, white stem, brownish top, Don't want them slimy. Don't want slugs on them. Actually, I've seen deer and chipmunks eat them physically in the woods before, so I know that they do get foraged on by wildlife. So, and they'll beat you to it a lot of times. Depends on the woodlot, but you got to have it in a specific spot. Just like most mushrooms, they're kind of colony forming, and they need specific moisture conditions, temperature conditions, and then some need different wood or soil conditions with that. So, um, chicken of the woods was one I found the other day. Morels are always good. Puffballs, those ones are kind of random. Puffballs grow just about anywhere, if you got the right rains and moisture conditions. So, but those are kind of my kind of three favorite forage mushrooms. I think chicken of the woods is probably my favorite, and then I do really like morels and puffballs. I think would be a pretty close tie. I'm not a huge mushroom guy, and those ones are pretty easily identifiable for not having lookalikes that are going to make you really sick or potentially kill you. So, uh, which clover, in your opinion, do deer like the best and like the least? So, I think if you're planting a clover, let's just say in a food plot, it's going to range depending on your soil conditions you have for your specific plot. With that being said, there's some very good staples for food plots, stuff that's going to grow in, poor soils, maybe stuff you want to put a lot of nitrogen into. Um, stuff if it depends on your whole reason. There's different varietals for different reasons. I like a blend of white clovers mixed with some medium reds. Um, I have some balança that's going to go in next year because I've never planted balança heavy in a mix, but I have a mix coming up that I'm going to be putting a lot of balança fixation, which is a heavy nitrogen forming one to put some nitrogen back in my soil because I've seen some depletion of nitrogen in my soils or having to put a lot of fertilizer to it to get my nitrogen levels where I need them. But typically, to release that nitrogen, you need to terminate the crop or to get a mass release of the nitrogen nodules in the soil so that the plants can take it up. So if you're using it as a nitrogen recycler for your crop, you're going to have to terminate. But the clover that I like best, if it's a specific varietal or blend, I don't really have one. I look for one that's, got a good mix of species, not a lot of fillers. And you got to remember, especially if you are planting clovers for the first time, your inoculant to get the right bacterial breakdown for those clovers to really establish and do well, you need those inoculants on your clovers. That's why you see a lot of quote inert matter or coating on clovers for the most part. It's an inoculant to help those plants establish because they don't have those bacteria in the soil to help them establish and develop correctly or efficiently in the soil. So that's why you see a lot of those with coatings on them. So I don't say steer away from coated seed. In those situations, I think it's beneficial and in some cases a definite must. Uh, some of my ones I lean on a lot. I lean on a lot of crimson clover for mixing in with my turnips. It does really well at coming up the following spring after the turnips have died for the year and everything like that. So the crimson's a really good one. Medium red's another one that I've planted a lot of in the past. Ladino whites. All of those are going to be for specific soils or mixed into some sort of a blend. I don't like a lot of single species monoculture, or I guess I'll say single varietal monocultures. We'll put it that way. Because if you have a clover field, I also like mixing chicory in with it. I have a really good clover field that we call top field that's got a lot of chicory in it right now, and I like the little bit of diversity difference that provides going into these fall months and getting through some of the drier points we had this summer. It provided still a green leafy forage out there to have in the field when the clover was starting to go a little dormant and kind of recede back a little bit. So I think a blend is some species is always best. Single species, I wouldn't recommend a single species. It would depend on your soils and everything to decide what clover is going to be best for you. And what I'm using in the Northeast might not be what's going to be best suited for you, Mark, down in South Carolina. So that's all going to vary based on your specific zones and regions and stuff like that. You might be able to grow clovers that I can't grow up here because I might not have a big enough growing window, or they're not as cold hardy, whatever it might be. So you might need clovers that are going to be more drought resistant in your region of South Carolina. I'm not that familiar with it. So that's all stuff you need to take into account when kind of selecting your clover species for your property or your field. Um, that's a very good question, and always I suggest probably in the South I would nurse it in with oats to help it establish and get its feet growing good in the soil. You can use wheat and rye. You won't have to deal with the winter die off as much with the oats. They'll probably push through in South Carolina as long as you don't have a rough winter, relatively. So that's something that you could take more of an advantage of as an oat nurse crop, whereas I can't really run an oat nurse crop because I'll get the winter kill on the oats. So, and like always with any food plot or planting, if it doesn't work from a hunting standpoint or a design access layout standpoint, I wouldn't plant that field anyway. Maybe it's, I say that is not just saying if you can't hunt over it, it doesn't fit. If you can't set that up to be beneficial for a hunting standpoint going to and from with the deer movement, I wouldn't be planting that plot. If you could set it up where you can't hunt the food, but you can hunt the transitions that come out of the bedding going to the food, I think that's a great food plot location. And most times I'm not hunting right on food sources. Um, unless I'm a long distance away with a firearm. In most cases, I've only killed, well, let me think. I gotta go around the room. I've killed 2 bucks total on food. One was coming across the field, not browsing, and the other one was coming into an outlaw plot, which is something that we can lead into with the last topic of the night. But the other one was on an outlaw plot, and I grunted him over, and then he came in, browsed on a couple turnips before I shot him. So I didn't really kill any of my deer on food. The bucks I've killed have kind of killed in October or November. I've killed 2 in December, but not food related or food plot field related. But a good topic for outlaw plots. I actually plan on going around next week and looking really quick if I get good conditions to do it on the test plots for the tin cup turnip blend that went into standing bean fields to see how those are responding with the rains we've been getting and the beans yellowing off, and seeing what the growth is looking like in those. Now that we're getting into that third week of September, we should get a really good feel on how big those turnips are going to be going into October. So hopefully we don't have any hard frost and they can grow till mid-October, and we'll have another 30 days underneath them going into the first part of the season. But the outlaw plots is spreading turnips, cereal grains, whatever your crop might be, just top sowing it in to standing soybeans and allowing that to come up between the rows once the leaves start to drop, or if you have shorter bean or they're overbrowsed and you have a lot of sunlight coming down, it can be really, really successful. So it's not too late. I would say it's too late for turnips at this point to top sow in, because you would only probably get, at least in my area, 30 days ish. And usually I like to shoot for 45 to 60 with the varieties I use, because a lot of them will mature out at, let's just say, 80, 70, 75, 80 for maturity date. And I don't want my turnips to over mature either. So right now I'd be putting in cereal grains, winter wheat, cereal rye in my area. Maybe in some of the southern areas you could put an oat into it, but oats really don't do as good top sowing as cereal rye or winter wheat. So those are 2 good ones to get outlaw plots in here before October 1st. Just top sow them into your soybeans, 150 pounds an acre or so. And then I would just do it in front of food plots, stand locations, or areas where you can get on and off, or hunt that field linearly. If there's a big field and you can run it like in a linear section, obviously down the rows would help you with that linear. to, have them forage past your stand on a line. That's something I've used for success in the past, harvesting does, not necessarily bucks, but it's a good tactic and something that you can do in a lot of cases on ground that you might not own, that the farmer that runs the ground, that you can put a crop to it to help take some of the pressure off the crops that he's putting on the field. So Derek says, what time of the year do you typically start grunting? Do you find it to be more successful in later season? Is it even worth trying early season? So grunting, from what I've found, is very much goes back to that individual with the deer specifically. One deer specific, this guy. So this is Curly, and Curly was a buck that I had the opportunity to shoot last year. I passed him. Curly hasn't shown back up yet. I did find both of his sheds. I actually found this one, and Nate found this one. That was a good buck, and just for an example, when there was a bunch of chasing going on, grunting and everything like that, he turned, tucked his tail, and walked the complete opposite way fast down the hill. So that's one deer that I probably wouldn't grunt at, just because of the personal, connection with that buck, knowing his temperament or how he, responds. It could be because he got his ass kicked at one point. It's tough to say, but typically for grunting, I would say it would depend on what your style of grunting would be. Soft contact grunts, I'd call them, little short, tick ticks, and those kind of soft grunts, not like deep growls and stuff like that. I wouldn't use those in most cases, if any, unless I knew it was a really aggressive buck. One that's really dominant, really, mature for the area or whatever it might be. And I also tone my grunt calls back so they sound like a mid-aged buck, not that deep buck roar you see on the Outdoor Channel or something like that. Just because I don't want to spook off a buck. But a deer like Curly, it might not matter if it was a year and a half old grunting at him or a big 4 or 5 year old buck grunting at him. But I try to stay to a mid-tone grunt, I'd call it. Not deep, but not like super high, almost doe bleedy. That might be something that I talk about in an episode during season. I'll probably grab my grunt call and stuff like that. I don't do a whole lot of rattling anymore, and my rattling is really soft, clicks and pops, and just more grinding the antlers together than the crazy, knockout, drag out, um, fights and stuff like that. But yeah, I grunt a fair amount actually. Just like I said, soft contact grunts, especially if I see a deer cruising. But it would be more in the, I guess, late October for our kind of timing of stuff. So I would say it's kind of a mid-season, but I have grunted deer in early October, just soft contact grunt them in, as I see them kind of cruising through the leaves and can't really get a good look at them. I've grunted a couple bucks in like that for early season. Find grunting to be surprisingly successful out here. I've killed nice mule deer and whitetail grunting. Do you think it's worth rattling and grunting together? So usually when I am rattling, I'll, I guess, kind of paint a picture with the grunting and everything like that, and the rattle. I might, start off with some soft contact grunts, and then I might do a deeper, or make it maybe kind of a grunt, kind of that, more of an aggressive type grunt with it, rather than just a kind of soft tone grunt, to a more of a kind of a growl roar, whatever you kind of call it, with that grunt call. And then I might hit those antlers one time good on the back, and then just put them together and pop them and stuff like that. The biggest thing I like when I'm rattling or calling is if I can throw my wind into an area I don't expect the deer to come from, whether that's a pond, a big open field, a steep drop off of a big steep hill. I mean, out here it's a hill or a molehill compared to what you're probably used to, Derek. But I like putting my wind or something in an area um, where I can't have a deer circle behind me, because 9 times out of 10 they're going to try to circle your wind for getting an idea of what deer is making those sounds and those interactions together. So, but yeah, that's a great topic, and one we probably should talk about in a during the season episode, specifically kind of looking at what I've done. Because let me think. I think the oh so Bud actually he got called in on a blind grunt, and the buck I missed the day before him, which was quite a bit bigger than him, the one I shot underneath of, uh, both of those bucks came in on a blind grunt, and actually the bigger one, I turned him, I called him in with a rattle. He kind of circled downwind but didn't get my wind because of the thermal, and then he came back around to investigate on a soft couple contact grunts about 2 or 3 minutes later, and then that's when he popped out, and I misjudged him and missed my shot. Um, Other than that, my big 10 pointer, I rattled him in and snort wheezed him in. Actually, he came in super aggressive. Um, Outlaw was a cruising buck. The one I shot in the outlaw plot on my grandmother's with my bow, that buck was bleeded with a Primos can and grunted in. Again, same thing. Saw him cruising and then painted that scenario of a doe bleat and then grunting behind it. And so yeah, I've killed a couple bucks calling, over the years too. But you never know what's gonna fit. And like I said, I've grunted at bucks too, watched them pick their head up or turn their ears, and have no interest in wanting to be any part of it. So it all depends on their mood, depends on the buck, and their kind of order in the pecking order. I think is where that's really successful. So with super dominant older age class deer, I think you have a lot higher percent chance of that working. Or having a more balanced age class, I think you have a good chance of it working too. Where if you have a lot of 3-year-olds and there's a lot of social interaction, fighting and sparring and stuff like that, if you get a really condensed age class, I think that could work out really well too, for the success of that. So, but I think that puts us at so that puts us at 9:30 now. So we're gonna wrap it up for tonight. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, I'm gonna make sure for future ones that I check the audio with my phone as soon as I turn it on, to make sure that I'm good and my audio is coming through, so I'm not burning the first 20 minutes, wasting everybody's time talking with no audio. But I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, don't forget about the Woods and Wildlife event this weekend. I'll be speaking the 16th, that's Friday at 4 p.m. And then Saturday, the 17th, I'll be speaking at 2 p.m. And the event is 10 to 7 on Friday and then 9 to 3 on Saturday, and no event on Sunday for that. So it's just Friday and Saturday, and that's at the Steam Pageant Grounds there in Canandaigua. I'll be presenting, talking about buying and selling hunting land or recreational properties, and then tying that into how to kill better deer as a result of that, or bigger bucks. I think they called it bigger bucks. But thank you everyone for tuning in. This will be live posted on YouTube, as well as it'll be available on my Facebook page. And then the Bullhorn app you can listen back to anytime as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Love the questions, love the topics, love the conversation like always. We went a little over an hour. Next time we'll go for that nice hour and a half, 7:30 to 9 o'clock time frame. So take care everyone, and I'll catch you all next time here at the bar with Whitetails and Whiskey. And have a good one, guys. Take care.